Prepare yourself for a brief tutorial by Sailor Twift for my particular configuration resulting in near ENB quality without any ENB features except for the beloved depth of field. And the way I achieve this is a mixture of low impact mods that really come together for something beautiful and yet more tolerable for those of us with more middle of the road systems. I particularly am using an HD 7870 video card, which is about roughly $220 worth of graphics processing power. And so I'm actually able to max out Skyrim vanilla-wise on my full resolution 1920 by 1200 at about 55 to 65 frames per second, pretty constantly, very little stuttering. Excellent performance there. Most of us can do that with relatively cheap hardware. However, once we start messing around with these ENB mods, anything that's really demanding, we can really start to see, we do have limits. So keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and do the best we can with what limits we have. This is the heart of my configuration. I am not the author. Marmska? I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. Maybe he'll contact me answering that. But he gives pretty detailed instructions here. It's kind of a wall of text, but you do need to go through it and follow things to the detail. This right here is going to be your primary source here. Of course, you're going to extract. He only gives the two files. Make sure they are read-only. That is important. In addition, these are the versions, as well as 102, of ENB that will work with this particular preset. I imagine you could produce a preset that gives the same thing for newer depth of field versions. However, I haven't attempted to tweak with any of those yet. I know that this works, I've tested it, and I have it running, and that's good enough for me. If you go over to the ENB page here, you can see the newest version of those allowed by this preset is going to be 103. And you can see the URL up here. That's why I'm recording the Firefox here. Actually, this is WaterFox. I love WaterFox. It's just a 64-bit version of Firefox. Anyway, then you're going to need, as he instructs, a depth of field effect, which he recommends this one right here, Skyrim Visual Immersion. However, you're not going to bother with most of this mod. You're only going to steal his depth of field. And in fact, this is the only file you need. Right over here. The rest of it, I recommend you isolate just the files you need from any of these RARs that you're opening, and delete the rest of the RAR. Just only extract specifically the files you need. The preset disables every feature except for depth of field. However, there's still a possibility, at least in my mind, that if you have the other files that you don't need, which provide the other effects which you're disabling, there's a possibility that they could affect your performance. I don't know, I'm definitely not anywhere near knowledgeable enough to know whether or not that is true. However, I consider it worth avoiding it. Just be as minimalistic as possible. Do the bare minimum possible, and you will have the least complicated problems whenever something does go wrong. Now, once you have the depth of field installed with this preset, of course, make sure your ENB files are read-only so that they never get changed. And of course, that's going to be in your Skyrim directory. Now, do keep in mind, since this is an older ENB file, you're going to have to run this exe and then minimize it to tray. You can see I have it right here already minimized. And then you can go ahead and run Skyrim. Of course, you should be running, the skse loader.exe, not the actual Skyrim.exe. After you have the depth of field set up, you're going to need to approximate the rest of the ENB features, and surprisingly, the FXAA post-process injector actually does a lot of that. And then, of course, you are going to need the backbone of the other ENB mods, which, even though the ENB are wonderful tools, the real backbone is the Climates of Tamriel and the realistic lighting overhaul. They're the ones that make the game capable of being tweaked so. And that's because the lighting, the vanilla version of the game, just it looks good for an Xbox game, but it just doesn't provide the back or the framework to produce those beautiful imageries you see on all those ENB videos. Now, I want to be clear, I would never compare my quality to something like that of sharpshooters. If you've seen any of those sharpshooters or any of the more demanding ENB versions, they are beautiful, and mine does not simply compare. And in fact, I did have Real Vision Performance installed, and there are a few areas, especially during the morning hours, where it just looks way prettier, and there's no way I could ever get quite up there. However, for the vast majority of the game experience, it's going to look wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and prove that in a little bit here with a video that I've prepared, but before I do that, I'm just going to briefly go over the mods that I have installed. You can pause, and if you see anything you don't know about, I recommend every single mod that I use. I'm pretty minimalistic. It's not that these 81 mods are the only ones I've ever used, it's that these are the ones that I still use. I'm pretty good about being minimalistic and removing anything that I decide or that I replace or find an upgrade for, and just keeping things as clean as possible. And I recommend you do that as well. It's a bit more time consuming, but when you have problems, solving them becomes a lot simpler. So once again, I always emphasize minimalism. Bear with me one moment while I switch over to VLC, and I'll show you my little video showing how pretty this really looks in action. Do keep in mind my performance is a little bit lower than I normally get using this preset and everything enabled. I'm looking at about 45 to 55 usually when I'm outdoors, but with fraps running it can dip a little bit lower. So you're not going to see perfect performance, but if you're that's not only going to matter to someone like me who's a real performance nut. I just got used to the perfect 60, you know? I got used to that because that's how I had Skyrim running before. So here we are. I'm going to go ahead and start the video in Riverwood. I'm going to go ahead and wait until morning time so we can get the best lighting. That climate's a Tamriel really makes a very beautiful morning sunshine effect. As we wait till morning, you're going to see that some hired thugs are going to attack my character. I went ahead and set this all up on purpose just to show you a little bit of what it's like in combat here. And I'll go ahead and turn up the volume and let the video speak for itself.
Damn you! At your back! Nothing.
Stupid guard, help me! What's wrong with you? Protect me!
It's true. A dragon has attacked a white dragon.
You remind me of my cousin. Feel sad too.
Skyrim guards just...
You're worse. Fine rock, cat. You won't be here alive. Get buried.
Almost killed Sven there.
This is the end. Fine. Skyrim belongs. You won't get the best of me.
So I decided to go with a little bit of revenge. This guy's been pissing me off. I'll go ahead and reanimate his corpse and screw around with him a little bit and then turn him to ashes. That's what you get for fucking with the game.
What a waste.
ivy vegetation, that's a texture mod. It's essential. And that's just a little demonstration of what this mod looks like in action. And the dungeons, of course, it looks wonderful, but outside is where it really stretches its legs and shows just how pretty it all is. As far as interiors go, you know, it's the regular realistic lighting overhaul beautifulness of requiring torches and actual darknesses, unlike the vanilla version of the game. So it really doesn't take that monstrous of a setup in order to get this game looking wonderful. And in fact, the ENB, I would say for the most part, unless you just really have a lot of excess graphical muscle in your computer, the ENB mods for the most part just aren't worth the hit, and you're much better off getting something like this set up. Thank you for watching, and if you got any other questions or if you're having problems, I'll do my best to answer them. I can really only answer with full confidence questions about my setup. Yours may take a little bit more tweaking. So, thank you for watching again.